Hi there, welcome to a focused video on the 3 steps of healing from compound PTSD, also known as compound trauma, in which separate individual events which have impacted the life of a survivor post-main trauma event, and how the survivor may feel it all links together from the original. However, separate events may require separate thought processing and solutions. I have done a series on this, understanding the depths of the struggles and examples, then following on with another video of the alternative side as to how a new partner could perceive the situation and their genuine thoughts towards the partner, the one dealing with the survival struggles and PTSD. Now it's about combining it all together with the key 3-step approach for the survivor to be able to face these struggles and encounters under their own terms, at their pace, to be able to heal from it slowly over time. Whether this video is to be consumed multiple times or here or there, everyone is welcome to watch it whenever. It's not going anywhere. This, on top of the previous videos in this series with compound trauma and other struggles and issues along the way, I've got a full playlist where you can find it all. Top right corner of the screen where the eye symbol is up there, you click on that eye symbol, you'll be able to find the drop-down menu box with the full playlist and the odd loose video attached. I'd just like to say welcome to anyone who's watching this live premiere. Feel free to sit back, relax, take it in, and at any point or time, if it does get too much or it gets a bit heavy, you can pause the video, have a break, get a drink, stretch the body, or you can return back to watching this video on another day. You do whatever works best for you, okay? So the importance of this video and the disclaimer, the methods that are going to be applied, so you get a heads up, will be the effect, step 1. The effect it had on the survivor. Step 2, third person point of view. Putting one's self in the shoes of a completely different person who may be going through the same struggle or about to. Being able to guide one's way through the mind of another person, as in what you would want, what you would hope for, what would you wish for within that other survivor. It's a way of bypassing certain defenses, but it's about using your own thoughts and genuine feelings. If you knew of another person who is going through the same thing already or about to, what would you say to them? What would you advise them, and how would you warn them? And what would you hope for when they're going through it or when they're coming out of the struggle, etc. And then step 3 will be the depth. So just to summarize it once again, step 1, the effects it has on the survivor. Step 2, third person point of view approach. And then step 3 is the depth, where it circles back to the survivor, and I will provide that depth and perspective. There'll be some questions along the way, but you don't owe me an answer. You don't have to say anything whatsoever. You can answer it in here, or if it does help when watching this video, maybe write it down on paper, a notepad, a digital notepad, as in how you're feeling in the moment and how you feel afterwards, or writing down the effects it had on you, and then your own thoughts, as in what you would do for someone else, and then additional thoughts if you want. Just be able to document this process, but under one's own power. And that's what the disclaimer and the importance is with this method of healing. It's about giving the survivor the time and space, not only to reflect, not only to process and reprocess trauma, but to be able to get a grip of it all and know what they're dealing with and how to handle it in some way. Being able to process the unprocessable, being able to find a form of closure and rebuild from there, something a survivor never had a chance of in the past because of timing, resources, availability, distractions, wasn't quite ready for it. And maybe other factors, other people in the survivor's life let them down. And that could be anyone. Letting down in a bad way, or just simply letting down because not everyone has the mental capacity to be able to be supportive and still remain a primary care individual, like a friend or a family member, without it getting too clinical, in a sense, like therapy. Being able to draw the line between the two, still maintain a connection, it can be rather hard. But there's no fighting here. There is no resistance needed. Today is about finally bringing a form of closure in regard to the compounded trauma over time. Now, I have done some videos, as in a form of closure in why a previous partner, an individual, did what they did to you. That video is available in the playlist up there. As prominent and important as that one singular event or prolonged trauma is, as said, if a survivor has come out of that and then gone into other trauma down the line, it can feel like it all links together, but it's separate. The reason why all of this is important is, in short, if a survivor felt that it all linked together, they would feel that the main and original problem, if that can't be fixed or adjusted correctly, then it means nothing else can. So there's no progress. But it's about understanding that maybe not everything can be resolved immediately, but some stuff certainly can. That maybe, like with trauma and recovery, it's not linear. 2 steps forwards, 1 step back. And the 1 step back feels worse than the most progress made. Because it's not linear, well then the healing and the perspective in regard to these events over time, healing or processing doesn't have to be linear there either. You work with what you got and what you can, as in mental capacity, physical load, and how you feel on the day. To confront, to process, to understand, and to look at it from different points of views, etc. Being able to just get a better understanding and having that closure for each event, regardless of the order. Being able to do it in the order that you want. As for today, though, the order of how we're going to go through it is mostly the same as like what I've done with the previous videos, just for that consistency. But as I said, you can always look back, you can rewind at whatever part in the video, whatever works best for you. And if you want to reflect back on this series, part 1, part 2, and part 3, it will be available in the playlist, okay? So, with that all being said, the disclaimer as well will begin right away. So an example of compounded trauma, being cheated on, whether that be from the very first bad relationship and bad partner or a secondary partner after. In terms of being cheated on, depending on how you found out and if you saw it firsthand. Step 1. What was the effect? What was the effect it had on you initially and then over time when processing it? Did it feel like a shock at first? It was surreal. You were originally never anticipating something like that to happen. Maybe there was not really any signs or indications before. Maybe you may have been mistreated or disrespected by that partner, but you managed to look beyond and try and see the light in the dark, and even forgave them, was very forgiving, despite what they may have done. But now, to find yourself in a position where you've found out or walked in on the person you're supposed to love and care and trust or have hope in, as in a future, an exclusive relationship, to see that very person with a complete stranger or so, how did that genuinely make you feel? Was it like the feeling of the heart dropping down to the foot? Was it the feeling of the tummy spiking with a feeling of dread? The brain feeling a little bit fuzzy? Dealing with it all in a short space of time, finding it hard to believe, possibly? That possible feeling of betrayal? Was there a time where you felt that you were under or devalued because of it? Was there a moment where you blamed yourself to try and excuse it or to try and justify why someone would do that to you? By blaming yourself, maybe a form of trying to gain back some control, to maintain a level of control which was about to be lost, just like the potential relationship and the trust within it being lost and the respect being lost. All of that from one event. The aspect of cheating at times can shatter a relationship, the trust within, the respect, the comfort, the safety, and all of that. For a survivor who may be also dealing with maltreatment, poor treatment along the way, or early stages of it, in whatever order it happens, it's a lot to take on for a survivor. Even if it hadn't got to the point of the full-on bad treatment, the abuse and all that, because it was early days, that cheating is still a form of emotional abuse. Because if they were truly loyal and truly cared, they would have never have done that to you. And yeah, that's what they did. So regardless of what stage it happened in the relationship, how did it make you feel in the moment? And then when it came to processing it hours later or the day later, how did you think? What was going through your mind? Was there ever a point where the bad partner tried twisting it on you to justify their actions, to say what they did was okay when really it's not? Was there any attempts of trying to manipulate or deflect in the situation? They've been caught out. They might apologise, but are they apologising because they're sorry, or are they simply apologising because they got caught and that's it? It's something to consider. The feeling within. Was there ever a time where either they made you feel less of a person, or in your mind, to try and form closure, to try and figure out why they did what they did, if they didn't explain it, did you ever blame yourself for them cheating on another individual and you being on the receiving end of it? Did you ever feel that it's because of your appearance, inside or out? Because of how you talk, how you sound, your role in life? Areas like that, features and characteristics or materialistic things, as in you felt that you weren't worthy of that said person, or that bad partner felt that, or you felt that ex-bad partner deserved better. Trying to justify the situation to bring about your own closure, to try and make sense of it and to possibly try and make it up or change things in that relationship down the line to avoid being cheated on again. Was there a time where you had to make changes or sacrifices in hopes of being able to keep that said partner who you deeply cared about, out of fear of losing them, or fear of losing them to another person out there as like another form of cheating? Did you ever feel a time where you had no choice but to shed a part of yourself, change who you are, do different things, dress differently, act or talk differently? Was there ever a time where you had to or you considered it? As in losing or changing your own unique original identity for someone else because they either directly forced you to or indirectly you felt you had no choice but to do it in order to save the relationship. On top of dealing with the heavy feeling of betrayal, hurt, and pain, was there ever that numbing feeling within, that loss of control within yourself, having to change to be someone you're not for the sake of another person? Was there ever a time like that, or a consideration where that occurred? You just let that settle within the mind, okay? Now, step 2, third person. If you knew of someone, a fellow friend or a stranger, whether you be in the shoes of that said person or you were having a conversation with another individual who is going through the same struggles as cheating, what would you want for them? What would you say to them if you had the chance? Would you tell them that they need to break up? They need to walk away from that said partner, whether any direct abuse has been shown or not in that relationship? Should that person, that friend, that stranger walk away from that said relationship after the cheating, because it can be a downward slope from there, that there might not be any coming back from it, that it just fragments the relationship the moment there is cheating or a lack of loyalty, a form of betrayal? Is it best just to end it there and then, to walk away? Like, it's better on that survivor, in a sense, longer term, dealing with less pressure, less problems longer term, avoiding all the other future potential abuse that could happen physically and emotionally. If you were in the same room as another survivor who's walked in or heard about, their partner cheating, what would you want for them? What would you want them to do? Would you want them to stay with that said person, or to reflect and consider walking away before any more pain occurs? Now, step number 3, depth, linking it back. Is it possible that you may feel reluctant in giving advice to a person you care about or know of, or stumbled upon, if they were going through the same experience as you, or what you've gone through in the past, someone else is going through it right now? Do you feel a level of reluctance to give advice because you feel you would be a hypocrite for telling someone what to do in life when you did the opposite yourself? But here's the reality. You're speaking from experience. You know what it's like. You've been there and back. This other person, it's their first time, maybe. They don't know what's ahead. They don't know what to expect. Because when it's real, live, and in the moment, you may only deal and struggle and focus on what's in the present and trying to overcome it. You don't consider everything else ahead because you're not a mind reader, you're not a fortune teller, and at the end of the day, you don't want to be thinking too far ahead, especially in terms of negatives, because if you did, you could question, well, why are you even in a relationship if there's such negatives ahead and you already know about it? Realistically, you got no clue what's ahead. You might have hopes and wishes that it can be for the better, and that's normal. That's natural, normal human behavior, to want to think the best, to have good times ahead. Despite what may be going on in the moment, you've got the strength and the hope to look beyond, and that says a lot more about you than it does about the other half in that relationship. But what you've gone through should never have happened. and weren't deserving of. They shouldn't have done what they did. What they did under these conditions is a form of emotional abuse and power. They may do what they do to satisfy their selfish needs, disregarding your own feelings. And deep down within them, depending on how the bond has been created, they might do it at a certain time when they feel or know that you're not going to leave them. That's not out of a sign of weakness. It's out of a sign of loyalty, love, and that bond being formed. When it comes to the unnatural parts, though, where the bad individual may create the trauma bond and convince the survivor no one else wants them, no one else will love them, there's nowhere else to go, there's no one else there to support that said survivor, emotionally, socially, and maybe the financial aspects as well, where along the way the survivor may lose a sense of themselves through the control of the other bad partner. And once that's established, the bad partner can, in their mind, do anything without the fear of losing that said survivor because of that emotional, unnatural bond that has been created. You know what I'm saying? This is not about blaming the survivor. This is about understanding the complexity of the situation, because when there's a lot of depth, when there's emotion within the struggle, when there is loyalty, when there is depth, etc., it can make it so much harder to just pull away, to pull the plug. When you deeply care about someone, it's hard to walk away. Even if they've done something to upset or hurt you, it's hard to disconnect, because from your point of view, that relationship actually meant something to you. That said person who you originally thought was a good person meant something to you. That vision and that version you hoped would remain that way. And when it doesn't, the mind, self-defense mechanism, reflects back and holds and clings onto that original memory, the positives, to try and cope with the negatives in an alternative way. It's like if there was a survivor or another situation where there was a breakup, there was a pause in a relationship, or there was total silence. One person may be dealing with stuff in life and they need time out. The other half that's functioning and somewhat okay may not know. And they don't know, is the relationship over or not? And the longer it goes on for, the more it feels like it's over. So in some cases, they'd be advised to just move on. But even without a trauma bond, this is what needs to be understood. Even without a trauma bond or some form of manipulation emotionally, one person who may care deeply about the other can be emotionally tethered in many different ways. The idea of just giving up or moving on or walking away, whether there's closure or not, can be extremely difficult. Even in the aspect of grief outside of trauma and PTSD, if a person has passed away, the other half that still remains alive may find it very hard to move on because of that deep connection in life and beyond. So because it can happen in normal situations too, outside of trauma, then it can definitely happen inside of a survivor in a relationship. More complexity, more depth. It's not that simple to just walk away. It's not that simple to just let go, because you might actually care a lot. They don't because of what they've done, but in the moment you still care and still holding on to hope as a coping mechanism and a true reflection of your own loyalty. That can never be taken from you, and that should never be put down. But once again, all this going on was in the moment at the time, and depending on the manipulation that the other half used on the survivor to justify their actions or to force the survivor to change in order to avoid any more cheating, well then it's out of the survivor's control, because they're not to know and they can't control how the other half's going to react and the next action that they're going to do. So it's not as simple as just walking away. And when it's all in the moment, you don't know what's ahead. You don't know what's going to happen next. Is it going to escalate? Will it get more controlling? Will it lead to love bombing? Will it lead to a sudden proposal and marriage, an apology mixed with a surprise to try and sweeten the darkness? Many things can happen. It can be an emotional roller coaster. And when you don't know what's ahead, you can't plan. And if you can't plan, well, then you can't avoid always. And if you can't avoid, it means you might get hurt down the line. And if you get hurt down the line, it can make everything a lot more difficult. And when things are a lot more difficult, it's harder to process. And then when it's harder to process, if you was to try and give your experience advice to another person, it might just seem not possible because of the complexity and that feeling of self-blame, depending on the depth of the struggles and the depth of the length of time it may have gone on for as well. Just that feeling of being a hypocrite, not wanting to appear like that, telling someone what they can and can't do. For a survivor who's been on the receiving end of being told what they can and can't do, they don't want to become that, so that's another reason. But a survivor may think, what I've gone through, how can I be telling anyone what to do when I've let it happen to me? I'm not reliable. I'm no use. No one's going to want my advice. No one. But that's the reality. Whilst maybe the past can't be changed, what can be, in a meaningful way, providing you want to and only if you want to, is the knowledge and advice that you carry is beyond important and helpful to an upcoming individual or a soon-to-be survivor, etc. Depending on the timeline of it, they could go through something like that said event. You've been there, you've done that, you've been on the receiving end, unfortunately, but you know what it takes. You know the responses, the actions, the reactions, the initial feelings then, and then how it escalates onwards, how changes may need to be made in unnatural ways, how the bad partner may act out themselves to try and justify or twist it onto yourself. You may know the ins and outs, and providing it's not too triggering, your advice and help towards another person would be extremely important and probably much needed. A survivor or an upcoming person isn't going to be thinking, you're a hypocrite, you're this, you're that. Providing there is clear communication, what you know of is of great value. And whilst you might feel like a hypocrite at the time, what you're doing by offering a friend or another person advice, you're not doing it to disrupt a relationship or to tear two people apart. You're not a home wrecker. You're protecting someone. You're enabling someone to protect themselves. Just by you offering advice or suggestions, they can still think for themselves. You don't have to worry about that. You're just providing an alternative perspective to give the tools and the heads up for that said person to make the next step, because ultimately it's their decision, not yours. But your influence can have a very impactful, positive effect. The feeling of being a hypocrite, you can remind yourself that what you're doing, you're acting out of the possible best interest of another person, and what you're doing is helping someone do the opposites of what you went through. It's like a way of gaining back power and control naturally by being able to help other people when you want or when you can. But look, one thing to always remember, it's not all about changing someone's life, another person's life, so they're better off and then what? You're left behind. It should never be treated like that. And as for inner thoughts, it should never be treated like, oh, I can't change my life. What I've gone through is really bad, but at least I can help someone else. You should never put yourself down there. What you need to remind yourself is, you might be present for someone else. That someone else is lucky to have you. That you are very important and valued in another person's life or encounter, because you are almost talking from the future on behalf of them, as in what could happen. giving a heads up. Ideally, you should have been deserving of the same exact thing back then. But maybe there just wasn't a time, place, or encounter, for example. At the end of the day, what you have gone through should never have happened, and you were deserving of so much more. What they did wasn't just cheating, it was abuse of power, abuse of trust, abuse of boundaries, and respect being thrown out of the window early on in a relationship or later. What they did wasn't done out of love to you, it was done out of either twisted revenge or acts of control, manipulation, punishment in unnecessary ways. A true caring partner would never do that to anyone, really. But beside that, what you've gone through, who you are now, still existing, is what matters and what's most important. Understandably, it can lead to being very cautious in the future and when around other people, not wanting a repeat, which is very understandable. But as for those steps to go over the original effect that it had on you, the third person, as in how would you think or feel if another person was in a similar boat, and then the depth of at the end of the day, what you've gone through, you are a valuable, important person to hold such knowledge and experience, which you should never have had to go through or be put through. But if there's ever a time, indirectly or on the side, if you ever put yourself down or feel you're not much use to people, you remind yourself you have the knowledge many other people don't have, and you can be that difference maker for other people when you're able or if you want, because there's no demand. But it's just about saying that you are of use and great importance within the world based on what you know of. What you know of can help many people out there. But it's never about doing all that on other people and neglecting yourself. You yourself are just as important, if not more. Because the very reason why you can be of help is because of what you've gone through. So it's all important there. Anyway, beside that, tying on with another form of bad treatment, and more so directly when it comes to physical actions and intimacy without consent. Along the lines of that, where the bad partner may have done something, interacted with the survivor, up close, touching and all that. Survivor didn't want it, but couldn't say no or didn't have a choice. In terms of the effect, what effect did it initially have on the survivor? How did it make you feel having to be subjected or put through something like that? One time or more than once? What was the initial feeling within and just after? Was it the feeling of not safe, confused, unsure, feeling the need to have a shower, but feeling not enough, needing to do it again and again and again, and so on? Feeling slightly shocked that a person who you look up to and close to could do that to you, especially if it's the first time it happens, and so on. The other part would be the body and the mind. Did it feel like there was a disconnect, or that the body and mind weren't together in line? That the mind did not want it, kept quiet, but was scared and felt violated, etc. Yet the confusing contrast with how the body reacted, visually looking like the body reacted the way it normally would if there was a form of consent, but reminding the feeling wasn't the same. It wasn't a good feeling, yet the body reacted the same way. How did that make you feel? Was it a confusing time? Was there a level of self-blame or self-doubt, as in not wanting it, but then the body wanting it? Or if the bad partner worded it like that, trying to convince and manipulate you into it was all okay and above board when clearly it wasn't, but gaslighting may have been applied to try and minimize the effects of what just happened. Arguably criminal, without consent. But what? Did the partner try playing it down and saying, well, you know me, you're with me, so it's not technically that. But if it was a stranger, then it is. Trying to justify it. Was there a time or a moment where you felt you were about to give a piece of your mind after what's happened, but you felt you couldn't because of the possible consequences or the possibilities that it could happen again? Did it ever feel like post-event that wearing clothes or certain clothing changed, or sleeping habits or sleeping arrangements changed or were slightly altered? Did the body or the mind ever flinch at the sound of a door banging or the sound of footsteps approaching, for example, the bedroom? If you came home early or you had a day off resting and when they returned or showed up, did you ever feel a level of discomfort or hairs standing up on the back of your neck or on your skin in general? Was there ever an inner feeling of inner disgust with yourself, but then also a feeling of hatred, frustration with what the other person had done to you? A complex time, a mixture of all kinds of emotions, and so on. Now, in terms of step 2, third person, whether you know someone, whether you be in the shoes of another person, what would you want? What would you hope? How would you think for them going through the same thing? Ultimately, what could you possibly do different? Because every situation can be different. But ultimately, if there was never a green light, there was never mutual consent, if there was none of that, well then it shouldn't have happened. If you knew of someone that had gone through it, would you be saying to that said person, it's not your fault, your mind and how you feel is what matters, how the body reacts is just natural biology, is unfortunate the timing it is, it's just natural, even if the feeling isn't there. For example, if you were in a bathroom and you were turning on the cold tap, you're manually interacting and stimulating something to trigger a reaction. By turning the tap head, you're enabling water to flow out, cold water, which then can have the side effect, through the stimulation of the pipes, maybe condensation or dampness upon the surface of the tap head. It becomes wet. But did the tap ask for it? Did the tap want that exactly to happen? Likely not. It was by the actions of another person. Whereas it can't be linked in terms of biology, it's that every action can cause a reaction. Even if something doesn't want it or isn't prepared, if there is a form of stimulation, it will lead to a reaction, the same way as if a person was in a doctor's office testing for reflexes using that mallet on the knee, hitting a nerve, and that natural reflex for the body to kick out. The patient, may not want to do that, but they can't control it. There are some parts of the body and times where you can't control it. It happens based on reflex, based on muscle memory, based on the biology of the body. I'm no deep expert there, but there are certain things that just simply can't be controlled. Similar to the way of if you were asleep and you're sleeping and dreaming and there was a reaction, like in an intimate way, as in with one's self based on a certain dream or thoughts within the mind. It's happened, but maybe you couldn't control the dream. And even when going to sleep, you didn't know what was going to happen next. But things just happened, and then the body naturally reacted to it by waking up and, the reaction to the body. It's not justifying it by saying the event that happened is all fine and okay, because it's not. It should never have happened. But the importance is that when it comes to the body, not everything can be controlled. Some things are natural, some things are down to stimulation. The mind may not want it, but the body reacts. But just because the body reacts doesn't mean that the body wanted it, doesn't mean that the body enjoyed it. And yet, likely, it was the bad partner that tried convincing the survivor that it was wanted, it was okay when it wasn't. That level of manipulation is only done for the bad partner to protect themselves, to avoid being reported or to avoid being kicked out of the person's life. It's not done out of care or love, it's done out of manipulation and one's own selfish actions. Sometimes a bad partner may do that type of intimacy even without consent because they want it and they will get it in their selfish, entitled, dark, toxic attitude. Like an emotional but a physical punching bag. If a bad partner had a bad day or things were going wrong, to get rid of that excess energy or built up, they take it out on the survivor who's done nothing wrong. Just because the bad partner's had a busy day, a long day, or there's been drama or conflict, they think they can just take it all out, release that inbuilt frustration out on the survivor. And the survivor's expected to just take it, accept it, when it should not be like that. That can be the twisted, dark mind of the bad partner. They take what they want, they get what they want, without considering what other people think, without considering what the survivor wants. That's not an equal relationship. That's one-sided, and another form of both physical and emotional abuse, which can have lasting possible side effects in which the survivor is confused with themselves, not sure why it happened, not sure if they did want it or if they didn't because of how the mind reacts, feelings, numb, and yet the body reacting and being convinced and gaslighted by the bad partner that it's all fine and normal when it really isn't. So for step 2, third person, if a survivor knows of someone else going through the same thing or already, what would you say to them? As in how the mind and how the body works, how they can't be in control of everything, and how at the end of the day a relationship should be built off communication and timing. One person may be ready, the other person may not. That should be respected, not to just push on through and disregard what the other person wants or doesn't want. And if that's the case, where a survivor can see it within someone else who simply wasn't deserving of that and understands the emotional and physical pain it can have long term, where it can lead to boundaries being violated and broken and feeling unsafe around that said person, flinching, tensing, worrying the next time it may happen. None of it should have happened, and it was never the survivor's fault. And just because the body reacted doesn't mean it was a good thing or that it was enjoyed. It was the complete opposite. If a survivor considers that, highlights it towards another person, then they're well within their right to reflect it back on themselves too, because they're in the same position as well. But you too are deserving of being kind and light upon yourself based on what you've gone through, what you didn't want, what you may have not been in control of either, because if there was a level of force or physicalness or weight or impact, there may have not been a way to escape or get out at the time. And that makes sense. That if you were asleep or half rested, you're not supposed to have eyes in the back of your head. You're allowed to be safe. You're allowed to be secure. You're allowed to sleep or be comfy in the comfort of your own home or shared house. You can't be expected to know when the person is going to come on in and, lean onto you and do something, and then you can't expect for that to happen or be ready or waiting for it to happen to then move away from it or to lock the door to say no immediately to escape whatever it may be. No person should ever have to live a life of having to always look over their shoulder, especially in a relationship, just to avoid something happening to them without consent. The areas, though, where a survivor may have been half asleep or pretending to be asleep to avoid it happening again, in hopes that the other partner would respect it. Asleep, likely not in the mood, won't bother, but they still did. And the survivor, pretending to be asleep, experienced every moment. That can be more complex, in which the survivor may blame themselves. They should have just got up, stood up, walked out the room quickly, moved quick, screamed, done something. But how can you, when you're in the presence of a possible intimidating, bad or dangerous individual, that a survivor could stand up, move, scream, shout, but what would that lead to? Possible further escalation because of what the other partner could do to silence them. Sometimes it can be going through hell to avoid further hell, allowing the other person to please and satisfy themselves at the cost of the survivor's feelings and the emotional, psychological impact it has on them. Going through one thing to avoid another problem, de-escalating the situation but still suffering at the same time. It can be hard. And let's not forget the freeze. A freeze response doesn't literally have to happen out of trauma, post-PTSD events. It can happen before. It can happen any time in life. Look at it this way. When there's an attack, when there's a fight, before it's even happened, people online or in casual can talk about what they would do in a situation, how they would react, how they would stand their ground and fight. But you're not to know, nor can you predict how you will feel and how you will react in the moment when it really does happen. People can talk a lot before it, but when it does come round, it might be the complete opposite. You might talk a big game, but when it does happen, or you are confronted with someone, you might run away. You might be scared. You might freeze. You could have a speech, a presentation lined up. You talk a lot, right? This is what I'm going to say. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Then when it comes to doing the presentation and the speech, you're stood there, mind goes blank because of the flight response or the fight mechanic or the brain fog, performance anxiety, the nerves. It can be anything. You can't always control how your body, mind will react next. When you're comfy, you can think more openly. But when something bad happens or you're in danger or in a threatening situation, the body, mind, defense mechanisms take over. And that could be to stand and fight your ground, or it could be to freeze or run away to protect oneself from any exposure. And then after, a person could kick themselves and say, why didn't I do this and why didn't I do that? Because once again, that biological response taking over, which you may have not planned for or knew of at the time. You thought this is how it was going to go, and it turned out being far different when it actually happened, the real situation. And like freezing because of being caught off guard, brain fog, not being able to reply or answer because of being put on the spot, being nervous, being shy, being scared. The mind overrides itself and shuts down to preserve itself, to protect, but in doing so, it denies the person the ability to talk, answer, to say something. That unpredictability, that biological response, that defense mechanism, and that overall shock value of a loved one violating the survivor physically, mentally, or both. How is the survivor supposed to react when they're not anticipating it, or when they're hoping that it won't be a repeat of the last time? And then when it does happen, all of a sudden, so quickly, how is a person supposed to react? What are they supposed to do when they may be overpowered, where emotionally they may feel small or feel like they've lost the voice, that no one's going to hear them, no one's going to see or help them? That might manifest in the future as a form of role play. Those manifesting thoughts of unprocessed trauma, those scared feelings of where they once were in the past, and they were helpless. All the power taken from them. It's just about understanding that there's only so much you can control, and there's only so much that you should be able to control, because it should be the responsibility of the other person to act accordingly. But what they did previously, should never have done it in the first place. Never, and not with anyone. Yet they did. They chose to disrespect you. They chose to put themselves first. They chose to break the boundaries and the trust. And they chose to choose themselves over the love of the relationship, which isn't obviously a good thing. And when it happens so quickly and all of a sudden, and when it's such a shock, the particular event, when the mind goes into defense mechanism, how can you react when you originally didn't have a game plan? And even if you did, things can be different when it really happens or comes about. And even if you felt that you could have avoided it to begin with, or you saw signs that it was going to happen an hour later, a day later, should anyone even have to think or put themselves in that place in the first place in a relationship, to always look over the shoulders, make sure the door's locked, or make sure the person comes home early or at a certain time to avoid any interaction physically, sleeping in a separate room? Should any of that have to happen in a relationship, in an unhealthy or a bad controlling one? Things can happen. But once again, reflecting on the mind and the body can be disconnected at times. The equivalent, but as a paradox to, in a new relationship, the heart pulls for that love, for that warmth, but the mind pulls in the opposite direction because of the cautiousness of the past and not wanting to be hurt again or taken advantage of, etc. Now, not for this to explain everything, but the aspect of physical intimacy being done without consent. If there was ever a time where a survivor had gone through something way back in the past, or if there was a childhood trauma where something happened, where trust, rules, honesty, boundaries, respect was broken, for a survivor to go through that, possibly they're introduced into a world which at first that may seem the norm and what's acceptable when it literally isn't. That darkness and sense of familiarity in the wrong way, but that's all the person may know of, which can lead to a rebound in the future, where if they were put through that again, it might bring them back to the past. And if they were convinced or told or forced to think that what happens here is for a reason, and how this happens is because the body wants it regardless of the mind, levels of manipulation and control like that can seep back in as a trigger to a newer or a first-time relationship with a bad partner. The scent, the sound, the feeling, the touch, the environment, the sense, the atmosphere, whatever it is, the words, can trigger an old memory from the past and it brings them back to it. Whether that be feeling it's normal and fine, being convinced by the unnatural past, like again now, and putting up with it, and then later reflecting and realizing it's not what they wanted and it should never have happened. Or if during the bad treatment by the bad partner, doing something without consent, if the survivor was brought back to something that may have happened before or childhood, that re-traumatization in the moment can be so complex, it paralyzes the body physically, emotionally, where the survivor can't fight back, can't kick out, can't walk away, can't pull away, can't say anything, can't say no. In fairness, though, even if they could say something or move in a bad controlling relationship, for an abusive partner to even consider doing all that in the first place, they likely wouldn't stop anyway, showing the depth. But just to explain the areas of where a survivor felt they could have done more, should have done more, but yet they were frozen, possibly because of re-traumatization on the sideline if anything had happened previous. Reliving the past in the moment whilst a new but similar theme of abuse is going on. Complex, overriding the body and mind, where it's just hard to do anything, losing the voice. Not much could be done, ultimately. And what should have been done was you have a partner acting responsibly and respectfully, yet they chose to disregard all of that for the sake of their own selfish needs. So the effect it originally has on the survivor, to how the survivor would think or feel towards another person going through the same thing, and then once again that depth, that reminder of there is only so much that you can control, and there is such things that they should have controlled themselves, which they failed as a partner and failed as a person. And that doesn't fall back on you. Their actions aren't justified, not at all, but also their actions or what it led to wasn't a result of something that you did wrong. You did nothing wrong. Or not to say you did as in a controlling way, but from the looks of it, how could anything you do or not do justify that? It doesn't. It should never justify that. Just like on the sideline, true crime case Noah Presgrove. You might not know it, but Noah Presgrove, there's been theories that he may have been flirting with another girl, seen someone behind someone's back, and the friend to that said person didn't like that, felt betrayed, so took it out on Noah as revenge. Even if there was flirting, even if there was cheating, even if there was something done wrong, it doesn't justify that extreme outcome of death the same way as in something done without consent. Nothing justifies that response or reaction. And for a survivor who's done nothing but be loving and caring and looking past the darkness, to then be put through that, why? Should not happen. And yet it unfortunately did. So it's just about understanding the body and mind can be disconnected at times. The fight-flight mechanic can kick in. The disassociation can occur during the moment. Feeling not being able to escape, not being able to pull away, putting up with it, but disconnecting at the same time, feeling numb, feeling paralyzed, and then being confused by looking at the after effects and how the body reacted, and then being confused by it. But ultimately, both the mind and the body never wanted it and never asked for it. The body may have reacted, but that's just a natural biological response at a very unfortunate time through forced stimulation, which you did not ask for. So at the end of the day, body and mind may have acted or reacted in different ways, but ultimately both body and mind did not want it. That's just a reminder, considering how a survivor may have gone through it at the time and what may have been said to them by the hands of the bad partner. It's just about bringing the balance back into play and the perspective on a realistic aspect to emotionally regulate the situation and the past, never to justify, but to bring that closure to the survivor The mind and body never wanted it. Both never wanted it. Okay? Just perspective, that's all. Now, secondary partner, whether that be being put on the spot in a situation, doing something to please them, doing something because you don't want to let them down, but it's on the spot, doing something you don't want to do or you're not ready or prepared for, but feeling you've got no choice. How did that make you feel at the time when it was sprung upon you? Something that they told you to do or wanted you to do. Whether it's just them present or there's an audience or a crowd. Did it feel awkward? Did it feel impossible to say no? Did it feel like you had many eyes watching you and it was like you had to perform, not just to please the partner, but you didn't want to let anyone down and you didn't want anyone to be disappointed because of what you've already gone through in the past? Did it feel like you were performing, but it's not what you wanted to do? Did it feel tense? Did it feel stiff in a way, as in the body and the movement, as in not wanting to act, not wanting to perform, not wanting to do anything, just wanting to say no and that's it and walk away or end the night? Whether that be in public, whether that be in private, how did it make you feel when doing something you didn't want to do? When going through it and then afterwards, and how they acted and reacted as well? Did it feel like being put on display and overexposed? Did it feel like you were doing something which doesn't represent who you are or how you feel? Did it feel that during the time or the moment that you were losing a sense of yourself for the sake of someone else? Because if it falls in line with that, well then that secondary bad partner, there wasn't true love there or a proper relationship. They were, whether they know of your past or not, if they did, well then technically they were exploiting you to get what they wanted. And they've done it in such a way that they masked it as a surprise to soften the blow and then to say, right now you got to do something for me. You know, where a person could say, right, surprise, take you out somewhere nice, somewhere fancy, and then once there, then to spring it upon the survivor, now you got to do something for me. When arriving at the location, it's like put on the spot, right? When there's other people about, all in the moment, it's like there's no way of getting out of it, or at least that's how it might feel. For a survivor that's already gone through hell and back in the past, in this moment, it may feel like a moment where they have to follow through with it as a means of people-pleasing, a trauma response, because it's what the survivor has learned over time. Would you say you felt that rush within of anxiety, the drop of the heart, feeling it was all nice and then too good to be true, and realizing there's a catch, realizing you got to do something in return? Did it leave you almost stumbling for words and physically frozen for a second, trying to process what they've just told you and what they want? Feeling like it's a demand and an order, not an option. Feeling if you let them down or you don't do it, there may be punishment later. That fear of it could be worse if it's not done. So go through something you don't want to do, suffer by the hands of them, but slightly minimized from what it could be like after. Did it ever feel like that? Now, if you used to put yourself into the shoes of another person or knew of someone that was in that position, what would you say to them? Could it be suggesting that at the end of the day, at any time, they have the choice, as in the survivor? They can say no whenever, and they have the right to say no, and it's for the other people or person involved to respect the wishes. There is always a yes or a no. There is always a time to give consent or not. There's always a time to follow through with something or to say no. That even when a person does something supposedly nice for that said person, doesn't always mean that you owe them. You didn't ask for it in the first place. You don't owe them. It's like on the sideline, if you're a content creator, you do certain stuff and then people respond and thank you. They may gift you something. They may support you. They may give a super chat. They may give a donation. And as kind and good as that is, some people may do it with a catch, as in, I'm giving you the money already, and because you've now got it, I would like you to meet up with me. I would like you to hang out with me. But it puts the person that's received the payment in a very tricky situation. They're grateful and thankful for this gesture and what's being done. But the terms and conditions were only given once the reward was given in the first place, making it seem like that the one that's received the money has to owe the other person something now, without giving the terms and conditions to begin with, in order for the content creator to say no to it or to decline it. When you surprise or give a present to someone, you shouldn't always be demanding or expecting something back in return. But if you're initially rewarding or gifting someone a present in hopes of receiving something back, in the eyes of a bad partner, that's what they would do. But they would demand something back in return, but wouldn't bring it up first in natural conversation. They only give the terms and conditions when it's too late, when the survivor is dressed up, out and about, and in a compromised position, and if there's an audience and witnesses where it feels like it's impossible to say no, because everything's all set up now, the surprise is all there, the party's in full swing, you can't turn it down now, because if you do, it makes the survivor paradoxically look like the bad partner, look like the disappointment, look like the wrong one within it, looks like a bad individual for letting down the secret bad partner. You know what I'm saying? So in any situation, even outside of a controlling relationship, a bad one, a present, a reward, a gift can be given originally, but the true intent behind it may not always be natural. And the reward and gift may be given, and then the demand is issued after, because then it's like you've trapped someone. When receiving money, a donation, support, that's all positive and appreciated. But then there's a message after. You now have to meet me. You now have to do this. You now have to do that. But ultimately, it's about reminding yourself, as hard as it is, you don't owe them anything. They've brought it upon themselves to bring a difficult situation. That's on them. You didn't ask for it. You didn't demand for it. They gave because they wanted to. Whether you did something to begin with and they responded back with a thank you, or they just wanted to be kind in the first place but then unkind afterwards, you don't owe them anything. Now, a survivor could say that to another person. There could be a reward, there could be a surprise, there could be a surprise trip out somewhere, there could be drinks somewhere, there could be new clothes bought or new shoes bought, and then said, right, let's head out tonight and go somewhere. Or it seems all nice and fun and calm and valued and appreciated, and then once at a place, a restaurant, a club, a friend's house, wherever it is, and then that bad partner says, since I bought you that and you're using it now, I think now you should give back, or why not do this, make it up, or do that. And it's like a really tricky situation, being given, being rewarded, and now with a hidden condition, not being able to return the reward back, not being able to give it back because it seems ungrateful, or at least feels like that. Not being able to say no because it feels like disappointing the bad partner that's gone to such great lengths of making and putting effort into this said organised event, and everyone else around that's deceived by the bad person and seen as a good person, wolf in sheep's clothing. What's the audience, what's the crowd going to think? Are they going to defend the survivor? No, because they don't know the context. Are they going to defend the bad partner? Absolutely. If they knew the context, the dynamics, and what was behind that relationship, they would likely support and side with the survivor, but that closure isn't there. So really, the survivor may feel trapped, may feel unable to get out of the terms and conditions, signing a contract with never being told what the small print was to begin with, to know what to expect next. So it's like, you didn't ask, you didn't demand, but they made the choice to give. And if they're choosing to give, to gift, they shouldn't demand anything in return. A natural relationship, there shouldn't be demands or expectations like that in a forceful way. You want a gift or do something nice for someone, you shouldn't demand something back in return under those circumstances. And yet that's like how it was in a scenario like that for a survivor. So when a survivor does not ask, does not demand, but something is given to them, appreciate, thank you, but that should be it. It shouldn't go any further past that point or it gets unnatural. So in those circumstances, a survivor doesn't owe the other person anything, especially when it becomes unnatural or forced. And maybe a survivor could say that to another person or in third person. And that inner reflection would be, well, if that's how you think or feel elsewhere, well, that's the position that you were in back then. But understandably, all in the moment, you probably didn't see or feel it the same way. But upon reflection, would you look at it differently now? With knowing the intent behind their actions and what they wanted out of it, which they'd never disclosed to begin with. Because a proper relationship should be built on communication and trust, and in that circumstance, it doesn't look like it was. But once again, there's only so much that you can control and do in a relationship. It's the responsibility for them to act accordingly, which they appeared to fail in that area. Now, other aspects, false security, kind of tying on with that, but also other areas in life. In a relationship, a scenario where a survivor may be singing karaoke or maybe dancing somewhere. Bad partner sits back. Stranger or familiar face offers to interact with the survivor in a harmless, friendly way. Could be dancing, could be singing, could be just chatting, could be anything, really, within reason. Survivor may be cautious and careful, but out of respect as well, thinking highly of that said bad partner at the time, and say, is it okay? And what does the bad partner do? They say, yeah, sure. Go ahead. All good. It happens, dancing, singing, whatever. And then on the way home, atmosphere's different, cold, tense. The bad partner doesn't give eye contact, doesn't give comfort, doesn't touch, doesn't do anything. And then what? When home, they say how they really feel. They act out, they snap, they do something as like a punishment or a consequence to the survivor, making the survivor feel small, embarrassing or humiliating the survivor on the spot, whatever that could be. Desecrating that good day, ruining it now and making the survivor feel sad, making the survivor feel undervalued and confused because what happened earlier on in the day, the bad partner said it was okay, gave the thumbs up, a green light, all good, all fine. Survivor feels, oh, okay then, that's good to know. Survivor has been led into a false sense of security, made to think, oh, it's okay, it's fine, no problem. And yet all along, that bad partner was what? Brewing away inside, resenting the survivor for a certain action done when it was the bad partner that said it's okay to do. Being led into a false sense of security can be very impactful on top of the consequences after. For a survivor who may have gone through that at some point, how did it make you feel initially? In the moment where there was a hobby, an activity, something harmless or friendly, in which you considered the feelings and the thoughts of the person you were with. How did you feel when there was an offer, a suggestion to do something harmless, friendly, nothing intensive? It could be anything. It could be helping out. It could be just helping someone reach for an item. It could be simply dancing. It could be singing. It could be playing darts with someone. It could really be anything, whilst the bad partner sits back and just watches like it's all fine and okay. But how did it feel for you when the opportunity was offered and you considered the bad partner? What came to your mind first? Was it, oh, will they find it okay? Is it, should I do it? How did you feel? How did you feel when they gave the thumbs up and said, go ahead, do it? Did you reassure? Did you double check? Did you double down and say, look, I don't mind. I can step out of this. I can avoid it. I can say no to them. I don't want you to think that I am disrespecting you. I do consider and value your thoughts and opinions, etc. Did you double down just to make sure everything was fine and okay before you did whatever? And when they said, no, it's all fine, it's all good, no worries, you don't need to worry, did you feel a sense of relief that it's all fine and calm, that there's not going to be any problems? Was it a feeling of relaxation and then a bit of buzz and happiness, knowing that you can have fun in the moment without being judged, have fun in the moment without being punished for it, and it was all fine and happy? But then how did it feel afterwards on the way back, when the atmosphere changed, when all of a sudden the partner may have been cold, unresponsive? Did you get a sudden drop of the heart, a sudden flip in the tummy, knowing, oh shit, going home, closed doors, going to be more punishment, consequence, but not quite knowing what it will be, but knowing something is off? When the bad partner doesn't react or respond and gives the silent treatment, does that feel like this scary time because you don't know what's going on in the mind of the person? You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know if they're happy, sad, angry. You don't know what emotion they're showing because they're hiding it within. And they only show it when it's too late. Whether it's happened before or not, or it's the first time, how did it make you feel ultimately? That sudden switch up from the reassurance at a party to now them being all cold, as if they didn't like what you did, yet they were perfectly okay in allowing you to do it to begin with. Why have they suddenly retracted it now when they gave the consent and the heads up earlier? How's that fair? Leading you into a false sense of security, making you feel safe and okay and validated and acknowledged to do whatever, and then after they judge you, they look down on you, they make you feel bad, even though they allowed you or wanted you, whatever it may be, to do whatever. You know what I'm saying? Did it feel confusing, but also a bit of a shock, knocked back, not expecting it, the unpredictability, thinking it was all fine and okay, and then suddenly sprung upon you that, no, it's not, and it's a problem, and it's a bad thing, it's an issue? Did it feel like that? Now, step 2, third person. If you were in a different situation or knew of someone that was out somewhere doing something and they checked in on their partner, the main person, if it's okay to go off or do this or do that, and it was all accepted and it was all okay to do, what more is that person supposed to do? You as a survivor, what would you say to that other person? Or if you was in the shoes of someone else, what would you be thinking? Because surely, if you value your partner and trust and believe in them, you'd hope to believe in their words as well. So when they say something is fine or okay, because you respect them and believe in them, you'd think it's all okay, right? It's what says a lot about you in a positive way, more than them who's actually faking it in a way, pretending it's okay when it's not. In a natural, healthy relationship, you should be allowed to believe and trust in what's said, and that if something is okay, it's okay, there's no problems, and that there's no backlash after. In a normal, healthy relationship, that's how it should be. And maybe for that said person, that's how they saw it at the time. No issue, no struggle, no problem. even by doubling down and double checking on the bad partner, is it okay if I do it? Are you sure? Just that doubling down and questioning again for certainty and clarity shows that the survivor values the other partner and values the situation, the importance behind it. A level of care, a level of awareness, a level of alertness, all good within that said person. But for a survivor, in the shoes of another person going through the same event, what else are you supposed to do? What can you do? When the bad partner says, yes, it's okay, do it, it's fine, dance with that said person, what does the survivor do? No, I won't bother. No, it's okay, I won't bother. But why should you? Because if you believe in that said person and that everything's okay and you've been convinced and there is clarity there at first, you'd hope to believe in that, and that should be it, because that's what a relationship should be like. You shouldn't have to second guess or doubt what they're saying. You shouldn't have to do the opposite of what they say just to secretly please them. Now, long term in a bad relationship, it could lead to that, where the bad person says, no, it's okay, go out for the day. No, it's okay, hang out with that friend group. No, it's okay, go to the spa. And then the survivor says, no, I won't, I'm going to stay here with you. And then the bad partner says, no, it's okay, trust me, it's okay, trust me, do it. Have you ever thought why the bad partner is convincing and supportive of the survivor? Maybe because the bad partner wants material to justify what they're going to do to that survivor afterwards in a twisted way. What if that bad partner only wanted the survivor to go and do something just so then that bad partner could be angry at them afterwards and then have a reason as to what they're going to do next? Whether that be something physical, whether it be something psychological, whether it be materialistic, ripping a dress, cutting up clothing, cutting up, burning a bag, burning those gifted presents which were given recently as a punishment, a form of abuse, a form of control long term. But for the bad partner to do all that, to justify it, they had to sacrifice in their weird way what they really wanted and put on a front and say it's okay to do when it wasn't to them. But the survivor couldn't do anything about it because they weren't told and there wasn't clear communication. What else can a survivor do in a moment when there is a thumbs up, a green light to do whatever? That's being led into a false sense of security with a possible level of manipulation to set up what's going to happen at the night, end of the day, for the bad partner to do something, to retaliate, and for their reasoning is, oh, well, you did this and that earlier on. Then the survivor could say, yeah, but I did ask, is it okay if I do it or not? And then the bad partner does the manipulation, the gaslighting, and turns it upside down and says, well, no, I didn't quite say that. I actually said, I do mind, but if you have to, then go on then. It was never worded like that. But you see the gaslighting, that manipulation, that adjustment of wording to confuse and make the survivor doubt and question themselves. All that is unnatural. At the end of the day, in the moment, whatever happening, what the other partner, the bad one, should have done is clearly communicated their needs, yes or no. I'm comfortable with it or I'm not. It's not the be-all and end-all, but just that clear communication could have avoided a misunderstanding in a sense. Because at the end of the day, at sometimes the survivor is made to feel that it's their fault for it all. Even though they were given the thumbs up and it was all okay and approved of, the survivor feels like they shouldn't have done it. But they weren't to know at the time. If there's poor communication, what else can the survivors do? It's the same with survivor's guilt, the loss of someone when it's self-inflicted. The survivor can blame themselves and say, I should have done more, I should have looked for the early warning signs, I should have intervened, I should have questioned more. How are you supposed to when there's no clear communication in the first place? What if that bad person that does something to themselves to remove themselves from this earth, there is no clear communication? No clear communication about their struggles or suffering, you're not to know how bad it really is. There's only so much you can do in a relationship, and then there's only so much the other person can do in the relationship. If they're not doing their role, but you are, it's one-sided, it's not reciprocated. You can't do their job for them. It's for them to do it and take the responsibility and accountability. If they fail, that's on them. It's the same way with a party, with a get-together, where the bad partner says, no, it's okay, do it. I'm not bothered. I'm fine. It's okay. What they really mean to say is, I don't want you to do it. I'm not comfortable with it. My insecure self is screaming, you shouldn't be seeing or touching anyone else, but I'm going to allow you to do it. So then afterwards, I can use it against you and use it as a punishment. So then I satisfy myself by punishing you and humiliating you and making you feel small. So then the power dynamics are back in play again. So then long term, the next time round, there is an opportunity to do something. When I say it's okay, you will say, no, I won't do it. I won't do it. Then I say, no, it is okay. Don't worry. And the other person says, no, I'm going to stay by you. I'm going to cut myself out from those people. I'm going to avoid that opportunity. I'm going to deny myself of that because you matter first. But it's all being done, that internal monologue, what I've just given, all being done, planned out by the bad partner. Should a normal loving relationship be like that to that depth? Not at all. So just to reiterate it, a false sense of security, a survivor should never have to be put in that place to then be set up afterwards and then for an attack, a unwanted punishment to be applied when the survivor was never deserving of it and should never have gone for it in the first place. Should have been clear communication, yet there was a lack of clear communication because it was done with intent, possibly by the bad partner, to retaliate after. So, with that being said, let's move on to the next one. When it comes to the rebound effect, as in moving on post-bad relationship, post-bad trauma, finding a new relationship elsewhere, or a casual experience encounter because of what's previously happened, how a survivor may have been made to feel not valued, not appreciated, not feeling deserving of being exclusive with someone, so being in the messy, confusing time or phase of trying to reclaim power, refine themselves, and also blur out, numb the pain, feeling a bit lost, drifting here and there, not their true self in the moment. How does it feel, or how did it feel for a survivor? How does it feel to be rebounding? Is it like it's intense feeling, a deep feeling to be loved, to be valued, to be appreciated, to be included in something, to be heard, to be spoken to and with, to feel a part of something when you once were, but it didn't go to plan or it was taken from you, that you once valued the potential of something and now you no longer have, so that deep craving and desire is there and maybe ramped up and more intense now than it has ever been. But with the confusion and the hurt of the past and the manipulation and the gaslighting, has it now made you feel unsure as to what you specifically want or who you want and how? Did it feel like you wanted to be loved, you wanted to be with someone, but you also felt that you weren't deserving of it or the full experience? Did you feel that want or that need for the closeness and intimacy, but you also felt that you didn't deserve it exclusively, it had to be shared with someone else, like a third wheel? A complex, confusing time in which, in the moment, confused, did other people take advantage or too persuasive? And then after that feeling of regret, or even not feeling much because of it being a phase, a spiral of confusion and finding yourself wants and needs, but not the true self of what the person really wants or wanted before all of the darkness and trauma from the past. And that event itself, as in the rebound and who one was with and how you got around and how they treated you or how they treated you and made you feel after, if that went wrong or around the wrong person, wrong time, wrong place, how did that make you feel? Did it feel like being used? Did it feel like disrespecting one's own values, disrespecting one's own presence of what you used to think highly of yourself, and the concept of a proper relationship and what you've just done or been exposed to kind of takes it all away. How you see yourself taken all away. Did it ever feel like that, where that identity or that innocence or that naturalness or that, whether it be femininity or masculinity, depending on what gender, did it feel like that was altered or taken because of what's just been done or what happened? And then that later delayed feeling of either regret or questioning, was it the right thing? Should it have happened? Was there any retaliation by the person you interacted with? Did they respond negatively after? Did they demand for more? Did it feel like a re-traumatizing moment or a new traumatizing event of something you weren't fully in control of, whilst trying to find yourself and make sense of everything, whilst picking up all the pieces from the past? A confusing and messy time. Does it feel like a time or a moment in life where time stood still? Then upon reflection now, it's a time period where you don't want to reflect on or think of too much because it didn't mean much at the time, but it's also that reflection of that's what I did and not liking what you've done. Supposedly, did it feel or does it feel like that? Has it ever at any point? Step 2. Third person, if you were in a position or knew someone in a similar situation, what would you say to them? How would you think and feel about them being at a time of loss, confusion, uncertainty, things taken from them losing themselves in a previous relationship, then being spat out afterwards, not knowing what's right from what's wrong, losing what they truly want and what they value? A time where they're trying to gain back a level of control, trying to maintain a level of intimacy and fullness when it's been ripped before, going out of one dark room, entering another dark room, because not having the time to fully heal, to process previous trauma, not having the time to confront certain demons, a whirlwind, a storm, a flow but not smooth, a time where they can't breathe or think clearly because there's no time to. Going in and out of one relationship to another, rushed, but for reasons of wanting to heal the pain within and feeling that's the only way to do it. Does it ever feel, or would you ever consider that to another person in a situation? Because if so, then would it not reflect back on yourself that you yourself were at a difficult time, maybe not able to fully heal just yet, in a trance, like not fully present with your true self, feeling lost, feeling hurt by the past, and not knowing what's ahead, but wanting something to feel safe in the moment, living by the second, living on the edge, and clinging on to something even if unnatural or wrong timing to avoid completely crashing again or for good. From one meaningful connection to, in the present, seeing or feeling or hoping a meaningful connection in a unconventional or an impractical situation with a person or group, if that makes sense. Because the reality is, at the end of the day, you did what you did, but was it done out of what you really wanted and really needed and valued? Or was it at a time of where you may have felt like you were spiraling and out of control, or the loss of control, or the inability to think rationally, not to sound harsh or rude, but is it possible because of the lack of healing, lack of therapy, or fresh after trauma, wasn't completely of sound mind to be making the best informed decisions for the better of the said person themselves, as in the survivor, as in what they chose and what they did and how they reacted? It may have felt that's what was needed, not so much wanted. or what was needed to compensate for what's gone. But it wasn't for the best. It wasn't the healthiest option, but what can you do at a very difficult time if there is a lack of guidance and a lack of support? A survivor trying to find their way through life, trying to figure everything out when there's no guidance or help. What can a survivor do? The best that they can. And you can't blame a survivor for doing the best that they can, even if it is a very messy and complex moment or event. What matters is the present, how you think and how you reflect right now. If you believe and strongly believe that back then was meaningless and it meant nothing, well then likely that could well be the case. Meaningless at a time of when life felt meaningless, when feelings felt numb, and a person was trying to do everything and anything to feel something in life. Feeling a temporary buzz, a temporary high, a rush, chasing it. Feeling something that was taken, the intensity of wanting it back, doing whatever it takes to get, even if it's what may be regretted later. Kind of like chasing a drug. Short term, it feels great. Long term, not so much. Upon reflection, shouldn't have happened. But at the time, in the moment when it was relevant, it felt like it was needed. It felt like it was the right solution to problems. But it was only a short-term fix. And the action didn't define who they once were or what they truly stand for. But when a person isn't quite of healthy mind or fully healed, how are they supposed to think or feel? So now, upon reflection, how you think and feel now, what you truly value now, is what matters most. Where you are right now, where you can reflect on the past, to point out the positives, the negatives, any regrets or hopes that things could have been different, whether it could be controlled or not. What matters most is that reflection, which shows progress with yourself, and that's a huge positive. It's not about shaming the past, it's not about shaming yourself, it's just about highlighting what's natural and what isn't, what's difficult and what isn't, what was wanted, what was needed, what was real and what wasn't, what was a messy time and what isn't anymore, possibly. Being able to just think and stand still and reflect could be a sign that you're in a better place now than where you once were, which is a positive in its own right. Despite how you may feel and what you may carry till this day, being able to ever think or reflect back on the past, even if it means being critical, is a positive that progress has been made, or at least you are in a safer place now to think, to have the time without being judged, without being silenced. That those feelings or deep wants, original desires may come back now, and that conflict may be with what's happened in the past at an unnatural time. Unnatural feelings met now with present natural raw feelings, not quite gelling, creating that conflict, creating that self-hatred or self-blame or feeling low or feeling guilt or shame in or out of a new relationship, etc. But just reminding oneself the past was messy, confusing, and hard. For a person to go through such hell and to function perfectly is unheard of. Mistakes can be made, things can be done without true intent or done casually. But what a survivor needs to remind themselves, there are many times in life outside of trauma, outside of PTSD, where a fully functional, healthy person can do things which they may regret or things that they weren't ready for or weren't quite in the mood later or whatever, and regret it after. Many humans can make actions and responses which they may later regret or think badly of after. What that shows is you're not alone, and it is normal, and it can be different for every situation, but it's just about saying that things do happen, and it's understandable when times are very difficult or there's many factors going on. And in fairness, if a person is fully functional, fine and all good and there's no problems and they do something, you can't explain it the same way. But for a survivor that's gone through hard and struggles in the past, it makes more sense, because who they were back then doesn't define who they are now, and who they were back then at a messy time and what they may have wanted may be different now, and that's okay, because what they may want now and what they may hope for now is what they've always wanted, and they finally got back a level of breath, they finally got back a level of heart, as in what they truly want. And that's what should matter in the moment and onwards, with a new relationship or a future one, depending on where the survivor is at. Now, moving on. Photos. Photos exploited. When it felt that there was trust, when words and compliments were said, where the survivor felt comfortable in opening or sharing personal, private. How do you feel as a survivor? How do you feel when it was used against you and weaponized? A safe place turned into a war zone. Did it make you feel uncomfortable, scared, anxious as to what could happen next? The uncertainty and being left on the edge of the seat, being teased and tormented? Because if so, that is understandable. Feeling like the power is in someone else's hand, and then that feeling of being re-traumatized because of the past. The theme of losing power, control, someone else holding it in their hands, being able to do whatever they want and getting whatever they like. How did it make you feel? In third person, if you knew of someone who is in a similar situation, what would you say or think about them doing it? Like, it's reckless, it shouldn't have been done. Maybe not. Maybe. Like, it was a conversation, it was a discussion, it was a hangout, it was in private, and that's what it was meant for. In fact, there was a connection at the start and everything seemed fine and okay, and you shouldn't have to doubt or question it. It should be natural, it should be casual or building up to something and meaningful in a way. And if compliments are said, you would hope or believe that they would be genuine, right? And not fake. And not done just to get something out of it, like being gifted something and then terms and conditions afterwards. The flow being natural. What else could a survivor do at the hands of photos being exploited when they weren't to know to begin with? What more could they do? Because at the end of the day, if there's a connection, you'd hope that it's natural. Photos to be shared or suggested within reason. You think it should be safe. You're valued, you're appreciated. How it should go in a friendship or a relationship, how it builds. It was all fake. But you shouldn't have to think that everyone's fake every single moment, every single second, because then how could any healthy relationship happen if you're always that hyper alert? It just wouldn't be natural. The normal human response is to appreciate and to feel good when there's compliments. And that may lead to being more open and more vulnerable. A normal human response. It's been the shoes yourself of someone else who is either vulnerable or maybe even drunk. What can a drunk person do? Like what we said earlier, in terms of health, they're not quite of sound mind. They're alive, but they're not fully there with it because they're drunk. Their reaction times are slowed down. Their response is slowed down. Their feelings are altered. Their reaction timing is altered. What they do when drunk, they may regret later. But how can a drunk person show deep reflection or introspection with their deep thoughts when they're drunk? You can't expect much from a drunk person. They're not quite there with it. It's not being rude, it's just being, truthful. That when they do sober up, they're back to themselves, as in what they like, what they dislike, who they are and who they really are. Reactions, timing, back to normal. Mood, back to normal. At a baseline or a standard, consistent. The alcohol can loosen a person up, or it can make someone more negative or aggressive. Alcohol can make someone do things which they normally wouldn't do when not drunk. Sometimes alcohol could give a person confidence. It's like a booster in the moment, but they're not acting out of their true intent. They're not acting out of their true persona. So they're not acting out of their true persona. How can they be making the right informed decisions then? Because what they do now, they may later regret. But to keep things from escalating, if there was ever any regret, it could have been better if the other if the other partner or the other person online, for example, had deleted the photos when asked to or requested. Yeah, there could have still been a spark of anxiety and guilt and shame, but at least there would have been that opportunity to clear the air for the survivor to say, it was a mistake, I should never have done that, can you delete the photos please, and then end it there, never to be talked about again. That can still be a bit traumatizing, but not as traumatizing as when the bad partner weaponizes it and uses it as a bargaining chip, wanting to get more out of that survivor, where it feels like they're trapped again in a bad relationship on top of all the previous ones in the past. So, one of those things, ultimately, survivor can only do so much when they're drunk. It should be for the responsibility and the respect of a partner or semi-stranger or friend online to act accordingly, right? And even when sober, for communication to be there and for the bad person to listen and respect the wishes. At the end of the day, in the moment, when things are good and it feels like maybe a relationship is forming or the beginning of a connection, a survivor should never feel bad about that or guilty or feel ashamed for sharing photos when it was done with the intent of it being private, the intent of it being only shared with one person only, because that survivor genuinely believed in that other person, as in trust, as in safety, as in maybe believing that there was something coming out of it like a connection, which maybe at a time a survivor had longed for or wanted. The survivor may find themselves in recurring bad, sticky situations, but at the end of the day, it's just unfortunate, wrong place, wrong time, wrong person. Survivor simply wants to be loved. Survivor simply wants to be supported and finally, in a stable, healthy relationship. But unfortunately, they keep finding the wrong people in this world, which then may convince them that there's no good people. And along the way, that consistent self-blame of, it's always my fault, I've messed up again, I've put myself in this mess once again. But should a survivor blame themselves for just wanting to be loved? Is it a crime to be loved? Is it a crime to be vulnerable or open up to share with someone digitally, media-based or verbally, just because you see or value a connection in hopes it can lead to something? In a situation of being drunk, is it a crime to be drunk and put the trust indirectly into someone who should know better? Is that a crime? Should a survivor blame themselves for that? Should a survivor blame themselves for being safe enough to be themselves with the wrong person, which they did not know of at the time? There's got to be a fine line where the survivor is kind to themselves and realizes there is only so much that they can do in life and control. But the reality is, you can do everything right and you can still be hurt by people if they act bad. That there are cases in life, even with photos being exploited, where a person doesn't have PTSD, isn't drunk, and could be in a committed long-term relationship. Everything seems fine and perfect. Sharing photos, and then there's a breakup down the line, then the other half ends up leaking the photos online or on a dodgy website. And yet everything was fine and perfect all the way until the end. And then something happened. If photos can be exploited in long-term situations like that with more trust and more hope and more positivity and deeper connections, and it can still end in exploiting and being hurt, then it can happen as well with a trauma survivor in a more vulnerable situation in a way. It can happen in and out of situations, showing that the survivor isn't alone, and it can happen to a variety of people out there in many different ways. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the one recurring constant theme is the person on the other end, the other partner, doing the releasing, the leaking, the exploiting. They shouldn't be doing that to begin with. If there's respect or basic respect, then that line shouldn't be crossed, yet they did that. A survivor shouldn't blame themselves for other people's actions. A survivor shouldn't have to blame themselves to justify or excuse the actions of another person when it's the other person's own responsibility and accountability behind it. They should acknowledge, not the survivor. Does that make sense in a way? Now, stalking. When it comes to stalking, digital in real life or both? If you've gone through that, how does it make you feel? Tense, anxious, long term, looking over your shoulder, not feeling safe in your own place of living, feeling jumpy when out and about, restricting certain activities or limiting certain routes taken to avoid the what ifs. Lasting effects, of course. Things happening as in which you never asked for and never was aware of, sprung upon you, a person showing up out of nowhere, a person acting out, wanting you out of nowhere without any communication, feeling on the spot, feeling trapped in your own place. Difficult place to be in. Did it feel like the heart was racing and the mind was pulsing at every moment of a certain trigger, a noise, a knock, a bang, phone ringing? Dreading, is it them? When you got a friend request online, a notification online, the dread of, is it them under a different account? Hoping it's not. And then checking and it's not. And you get that deep feeling of relief, but then it's that feeling of, well, what about next time? It could be different. And then that fear and dread comes back round again. Constantly feeling on the edge. That feeling of on the edge. Muscles, body tensing. Difficulties with sleeping. Visions of nightmares and what could happen. Boundaries broken. Indirectly re-traumatized from the past if there was ever a time where a previous partner was stalking you in location or interrogating where you've been, what you've been up to. That can compound and compile together with future stalking with a complete stranger. It's bad enough with a partner, but it can be, maybe it feels harder or more difficult with a stranger, someone you don't know. You don't know their routine, you don't know their traits, you don't know what they're capable of. With a bad partner, as bad as they are, you know what they're capable of. With a stranger, you don't. So maybe the anxiousness, the scared feelings, uncomfortable, is a lot more intense, not knowing what will happen next, if there is a next time. In third person, what would you think or what would you say to a person going through stalking? What can they ultimately do? What can they do? Maybe they've already done what you've done, so what more can you do? Like reaching out to the police. What did the police say? Did the police follow it up, or did the police let you down? Because the police in the UK can be pathetic, can't they? Sometimes there's two-tier policing, and in other times, the police just give up. They'll chase around a person on a mobility scooter who's stolen a slice of bread, but they won't act on what you've gone through absolute hell. They'll give a short, basic solution of delete your account, delete this, delete that, make sacrifices, destroy your online social media life, whatever you built, any memories you formed, make sacrifices, lose more of yourself at the cost of another person out there that hasn't been treated or apprehended because the police chose the easy way out. How does that make you feel? How would that make the other person feel in third person? Knowing that there is a solution, but it means more sacrifices being made. It might mean safety, but it's not good enough. There should be more justice. Frustration, right? But once again, as a member of the general public, there's only so much that person could do. Reaching out to the police was the right thing to do. And having the strength to do it as well, reaching out, reporting it, can be hard. Because sometimes there's that fear of, if I report it, they're going to know and they're going to come after me. Or will I be threatened if I do report it? By making that decision, at whatever point, making that choice to report it in is a big strength. Regardless of the outcome, just the action, using that energy and strength to consider, to try, is what matters most. You've done your part, or that said person has done their part, to try and save, to protect themselves, possibly protect other people in the future. It's the police that let you down. It's the police that may have not done enough. Every situation is different, I know, but I've experienced it in other cases where police have let things down. Like the time at Christmas. Not quite being stalked, but being chased. Getting into the house, and this was when a child, a gang, a group, I think it was Christmas or Boxing Day, chasing me down at night as a child, getting into the house, people closing the door, and what did the gang do? Kicking the door in, almost getting in. What would they have done to me? What would they have done to other people around? Would they have killed me as a child? Would they have done other stuff? What would they have done? And then by calling the police, what did they do? Absolutely fuck all. Useless. As traumatizing as it can be, and the deep fear that it can set ahead, as in gangs and groups and the way people dress, the intimidation which I felt onwards past that point on, the aspect of acting or being on the receiving end of something, hoping for change and then not enough being done about it, can lead to frustration, it can lead to a feeling of loss of control, and there's just not much you can do about it. But just by existing in this world, by breathing every day, is a strength to yourself despite what you've been on the receiving end of, because you're still here. Them, who knows where they are, what they're up to. That's not your problem. What matters most is where you are now, and just having to move along, as hard as that is. Not every situation or outcome is perfect, unfortunately. But in terms of the actions and the steps that you could have made or tried along the way, you did everything right. You did nothing wrong. You weren't asking to be stalked in the first place, and you certainly did everything you could possibly do, I guess. Or, attempts to try to be safe, to protect yourself. What more can you do for that? Even if the outcome was lackluster or not much came about, you can't blame yourself for that. It's the hands of the other people, the responsibilities of other people to safeguard, like the police and so on. Stalking can be very impactful and can have long-term effects, but if there's ever a time where you blame yourself or feel not enough was done, that's not your problem, that's not your fault. Other people should have acted accordingly. The stalker should never have done it in the first place. They should have respected your boundaries. If you said no, they should have respected that. If you never knew them or bothered with them in the first place, they should never have just come up in the first place. And then anything after that, any other people involved to safeguard or protect should have done their job, should have done more. So, understandably, it should never have happened. And whether it be online, kicking oneself for it, or in real life, anywhere in life, stalking can happen, unfortunately. It's just about understanding the reality of things. It's unfortunate it happened to you, and it's not fair because of everything else you've gone through. It makes everything so much harder. Stalking by itself is traumatic, but stalking on top of everything that you've gone through can be beyond. So just the fact that you're existing or breathing, even though it's very hard to even consider it, you should be proud of yourself just for being still here, trying at least, trying to survive, Now, in terms of work, the aspect of trauma from work, overworking, trauma dumping, where you're going to work busy, colleagues or clients, you listen to their stories, their sad moments, you have the empathy because of your past, you connect, you help them, you listen to them at the cost of your own health and psychological stamina and energy. You end up being drained and consumed by other people's problems and neglecting your own. Would you say you felt that you were losing a part of yourself at times, or would you say you ever felt really emotionally invested in another person's life when it wasn't to do with you and it wasn't your issue to resolve, but you felt the need to because of the past and because you felt sorry for someone and you just wanted to help? Did you ever feel that in a relationship, how you were made to think onwards, you weren't of much use, so to compensate for it, you would work harder or do more or listen to more clients to try and make up for where you supposedly feel, where you fail or can't do much, but at the cost of your own health and the cost of being re-traumatized or traumatized in its own way? Would you say during moments of listening to other people, your chest was tightened or tense, your pulse rate spiked at times, you felt panic at moments, because hearing them was like putting yourself in the shoes of them, as in where you once were. And for a survivor of such hell, the worst place to be is where there's constant reminders. And often, for a survivor that's in that situation, it can be very triggering and very volatile. Would you say you found yourself trapped in those places where you couldn't get out? You couldn't say no because the service that you provide, if it's with clients or communication, that you didn't want to appear rude, it was a part of the service, you didn't want to appear cold, you felt you were stuck in a rock and a hard place, you didn't want to appear like a bad person or uncaring, so you sacrificed your own needs, hurt yourself before other people. Like the past with a previous partner where it was sprung upon you and you had to perform, you had to do something you didn't want to do. In this case with a client, you had to listen and put up with them even when you didn't want to, because it's a part of the service, it's a part of something. You felt it's your duty. But your health, your own self should come first at the end of the day, but it may feel impossible, right? How did you feel during it and then after, being reminded of maybe something similar that maybe you've gone through in the past? Did it seem like there was no way of ending the conversation? Did it feel like that dread of, right, I've finished the client, I've finished the booking, I've got to see them next week, I've got to see them in the next month's time? That dread ahead, no clear sight ahead. Did it feel like when you finished with one client or one colleague, you had that dread of, right, I've got to go elsewhere now, I've got to listen to them moan, I've got to listen to them complain, I've got to listen to them going about how dark or depressing life is, and to be honest, I'm sick of it because I've already gone through hell myself. I don't want to have to listen to someone else, no disrespect. Has it ever felt like that, where you wish you could just say, do you know what, screw it, I'm going home, or screw it, I'm driving off, going somewhere where there's no one about, so I don't have to listen to anyone, I don't have to talk to anyone, I can just shut everything out? Has it ever felt like that? Any frustration, any conflict with feeling bad for someone but then feeling the pain in yourself? Feeling like you've got to try and cut ties with contacts or clients because it's too triggering or traumatizing? Feeling like you're in a toxic environment with toxic people where there's side taking, where the client is talking about life or politics or their own life, and then they demand for you to choose or side with them or someone else, and then you feel that if you side with them or someone else, that if you fall out with them or they fall out with you, they will give you a bad name or a bad review onwards, and then it will affect your client base or it will affect your reputation. Wanting to remain impartial and neutral because you're there to do a job, not to be something else which you're not qualified to do or should be expected of. And just feeling that this is all too toxic and tense, this is all too much, this shouldn't be like this. Does it ever get too noisy? Too much? If you was to self-reflect or put yourself in the shoes of another person, having to be in an environment closed with others, toxic people, dark individuals, or people just going through a hard time, is it fair for the survivor? Honestly, is it fair for the survivor to go from one place to another throughout the day, not just one day, but the next day and the day after, to constantly hear about complaints, moaning, darkness, struggles and all of that? Whilst it could be deemed as part of the service or being caring, depending on the job and the role, it might not be in that description. Within fairness, okay, someone to talk to, yeah, it's good, it makes sense, but who does the survivor have to talk to? When the survivor goes to work or goes somewhere to do their job or whatever, and they've got to be the one that listens to other people's problems, and then the survivor has to either absorb it or give feedback or help, where does the survivor go to offload? Who's there for the survivor to listen to? Them. The survivor has to do all the listening, has to be a personal therapist, even though it's not a part of their job, has to be a personal carer, has to be a personal counsellor, because socially it's acceptable or demanded, or emotionally within the survivor, they may feel that they can't say no, or they can't let the client down, they can't let someone down, they don't want to be bad or cold, so they will put other people's feelings before their own. But to a survivor, who's got their back? To a survivor, who's there to listen to them? The survivor is the sponge, soaking up all the troubles about, and no one's there for them at the end of the day. How's that fair? So for a survivor in the shoes of someone else, would you want that for them? To go to work, to overwork, to avoid their own trauma, to listen to other people, to come back drained and tired and triggered anyway because of trauma. It's like a vicious cycle. Going to work to escape one's own trauma, to only be exposed to secondary trauma by the hands of other clients and colleagues, to then be re-triggered by their own past and brought back to it and then come back drained and tired. It's not fair. It shouldn't be like that. There should be boundaries. There should be limits respected upon the client, colleague, and the survivor, both ways. Small talk, communication about the world and life, but not a sob story, not a deep story, because that may, or that should be more so reserved for a qualified psychologist, therapist, or a proper partner that's there to support and be there. It's not the survivor's job to do all that. That's being overworked and in a way underpaid for their job role, not to put the person down, but the survivor shouldn't have to go through all that, or shouldn't have to think that they have to go through all that just to avoid disappointing someone. That the service or whatever the job is for itself should speak the words and should be enough. The survivor should have a choice as well as to what they do and where they go. The overall reflection is, depending on the job and the role, it might not be that easy to just choose and pick who you want and who you don't, who you interact with and don't. It might not be possible. And as for clients, you might be your own personal boss, which shows there's power to you, but still, it might be hard to pick and choose who you have and who you don't, because resources may be scarce. It might be hard. What ultimately needs to be done, though, is for the survivor to possibly respect themselves, put themselves first, because they matter just as much as the other person. There should at least be basic boundaries of respect. And if the survivor feels like they're going to let the other person down, I think the survivor has put other people first one too many times, don't you? That maybe the survivor has delayed their own healing and recovery because of other people in this world. Other people in this world get the healing, the recovery, the validation. What does the survivor get? The survivor gets drained energy, time used up, re-traumatized to come back home for what? Nothing. When is it the survivor's time to heal? When is it the survivor's time to be able to just relax or open up or to offload? They never get the time off. Even outside of work, they're working with their own trauma in the mind, which they may not know how to process. And the work, or the certain areas of lack of boundaries and lack of respect, is fueling the cycle. Now, understandably, for a survivor, that might seem quite a lot. But it's just about a gentle reminder. The survivor matters as much as the person that they may be listening to. But the survivor needs to try and listen to themselves based on if they're struggling and why or how, or what can be done about it if possible. Putting themselves first. Literally, physically, or metaphorically having a break from it all, if possible. Finding the time or the space to be able to breathe themselves. Finding the time to be able to listen to people without hearing everyone's life stories. By being able to work effectively without having to overwork as a means of escaping trauma, finding other ways of escapism like the bubble, a digital bubble online within reason, a YouTube bubble as a form of calming relaxation, or a physical relationship, a healthier one, bubble. That work, clients, and toxic people shouldn't dictate the life of a survivor that's already been through control and hell and back. They shouldn't have to relive it all over again through the lens of someone else. The survivor deserves their own life, deserves their own time, and deserves their own moments. There needs to be balance, because without balance, things won't heal. Things might feel worse. The survivor has the right to make that choice. or consider it at some point, right? Now, when it comes to being off work or just illness in itself, how does it make the survivor feel? How does it make you feel when you're unable to function or unable to do what you normally do, especially if it's a trauma response, keeping busy, running from feelings? When you can no longer outrun your feelings because you are paralyzed or unable to function because your body has collapsed, your mind is tired. Does it feel like that? Does it feel like heavy fatigue? Does it feel like you're in concrete? You can't move? Does it feel like when you wake up in the morning, it's only a matter of time before you go back to sleep? Groundhog Day. Does it feel like when you try to move and try and do a simple chore as getting out of the bed, taking the bins out, hanging washing up, turning the washing machine on, getting cereal, making a tea? Does it feel really tiring and heavy? Because that can be a deep trauma freeze, a system collapse because of overworking, high stress, high tension, and being exhausted mentally and physically. That feeling of heaviness and that feeling of maybe a lack of the ability of getting out of it, sinking in a sense. Every time you move, every action you make, it feels like you're sinking further and further down. Does it feel like that at any point? Now, if you're in the shoes of someone else that has been overworking, not just for days, but for months, not just for months, but for years, chronically, overworking 10 hours every single day, maybe, doing extra as well to escape, to distract, to numb the pain, but using up all that energy that at some point reaching burnout and having no choice but to stop. Would you want someone to push themselves to the absolute limit that they end up harming themselves worse than they do if they took it easier? But of course, understandably, it's not easy to just slow down, is it? It's not easy to just stop and breathe because of dealing with the unprocessed trauma, the unprocessed struggles. But there's a time and place for that, of course. But if there's such a way where that could be managed, or the beginning of that within reason and with time, would you want the person in the other shoes to be able to slow down just a little bit, to put themselves first? If that means staying still, if that means going for a walk, if that means stretching out, if that means hanging out with a friend here and there, if it means pursuing a new relationship and opening up to that more than opening up to strangers and toxic clients, being able to bring back power, being able to realign what the survivor truly wants and what they stand for, more of a healthy balance and growth, slow but steady. Is that something that you would consider or hope for within a survivor in other shoes? Because if so, anywhere, then why should it not reflect upon yourself? Maybe you need to write down or consider what you value or what you want most in life, whether it's possible or impossible, to just go from there. An ongoing things, a current or recent relationship in some way. Was the hope there? Did it ever feel to you that that was a difference maker? It was a change, it was refreshing, it challenged and countered all the darkness in one's life and all the other responsibilities and stresses elsewhere. Did it ever feel like that relationship was a nice distraction from your job? Whereas the other partner may have said, I'm sorry if I'm distracting you, I don't want to, and you may have said, no, you're the one distraction, I don't mind. Did you ever find yourself saying that and you meant it genuinely? Because if you did, within reason, that good distraction could be the very thing that could rival the distraction of overworking in an unhealthy way. To be able to do both, but to gain back that self-control and power on what you truly want and what you truly value without it being lost or harmed. Something to consider. And reflecting all the way back from original effect to what you'd want for someone else, to why can't it not apply to you too? Because you're deserving of that for the better. Now, beside that, When it comes to appointments, when it comes to hyper independence, getting on with it, putting up with it, whatever that is in life, let down in the past, did it feel like you were let down in the past? Did it feel like people disappointed you back then, so you were left with absolutely no choice but to do it all by yourself? Did it feel like there was nowhere to go? There was no one to reach out to because they just weren't there, or they were incapable with depth or understanding? So did it ever feel lonely, quiet, empty? Did it feel like on the surface layer, you have to pretend to be okay and strong, but inside you were crumbling and collapsing slowly, and you needed a hand to reach out, but you did not see and you could not feel it at all? Did it see like that? Understandable, the independence part, self-protection, and to avoid any more disappointment in life. But if you were in the shoes of someone else, what would you want for someone? Would you want them to struggle alone? Would you want them to burn themselves out? Or would you hope or wish possibly for them to find help or be with the right people, or find a way through to reach out to certain people, like friends, family, or loved ones, or partner, new one, to say what's up and what's really going on without the fear of worrying anyone? Because beside the fear or worrying if it might impact someone, if there's a relationship or a friendship, isn't it not worse where there's no communication at all, where there's just a black zone of not knowing, a dead silence, where who knows what could have happened? Would you hope or wish for the survivor and both the other person or whoever to be able to communicate effectively for that closure, peace, and support both ways, for a true healthy reflection of what a connection should be like? Because if those are some of the thoughts that you've considered or written down on paper, then why can't that apply to you? Is it because you don't feel you're deserving of it? Because you feel you're too ill or too broken for it? But the reality is, if the right person is present, or you've been around or felt you're around the right person, surely they should have been able to look beyond the surface layer, should have been able to look beyond the past of oneself, should have been able to look beyond any limitations or slight limitations here and there, and focus more on your own heart and the unique organs and abilities within yourself, what makes you you. That should matter most, right? Or at least it should. If you've ever found yourself in that position where a person has been like that, then it's something to hold on to hold on to them, to hold on to that idea. If it's something that you really want, if it's something that can help bridge the gap of the hyper-independence, bridge the gap of the isolation or any loneliness, to be able to maintain, retain, control and all of that, but to be able to share it equally with someone else, and to be able to relax and breathe at times without any problems or complications. If that could ever be a time, if that could ever happen, if it has happened or it's been supposedly felt as a possibility, is it not worth holding on to that down the line? Now, that can apply to a freeze as well, a deep freeze, how you feel in the moment to how you could feel after. Setting aside worry, setting aside not wanting to harm or pull anyone down, what do you ultimately want outside of that freeze or inside of the freeze? What do you ultimately want? Do you want to be in a freeze or not? It's not that simple, of course, but if you used to put yourself in the shoes of another person frozen in a deep withdrawal, really deep, what would you want for them? What would you hope for? And depending, maybe that could reflect upon yourself too, in the positive, because you're deserving of that as well. And lastly, as for loved ones, if they've ever passed away, you've lost loved ones, and it's created that feeling of the shattered vase, not wanting to lose anyone else, because anyone you get too close to, you lose them in some way or another. How did it make you feel at the time? Without going into too much depth, the feeling of loss and the feeling of emptiness, uncertainty, the future. And then how did it feel onwards, meeting someone else and the fear of losing them too? The fear of not wanting to jinx or ruin anything or get too close because you didn't want to lose it, didn't want to re-experience the trauma from the past. Because if you did, that could be traumatizing in itself. But the events which followed over time, loss, traumatizing, each loss, each event, loss of a job, loss of a friendship, loss of a relationship, loss of a partner through life leaving this world, or a loss of a parent or family member. All traumatizing in its own unique ways, of course. But in a third person sense, what would you hope and wish for within another person or in the shoes of someone else? For them just to keep people at arm's length, to never lose anyone again, but ultimately to never gain anyone, to feel anything anymore. What's more important? Avoiding loss or denying oneself of never being able to fully heal, never fully grow, to not fully reach that maximum potential if, on the basis what the survivor wants and wishes or dreams for, may tie in line with the connection of or with someone under that condition. In the shoes of someone else, would you wish or hope for them to be able to take the risk but not be harmed, to be able to reach out, to take that leap without being punished, without losing, without fear, and to just be present and present with someone, and for it to remain like that for as long as possible with no fear or worry? It might seem impossible, but around the right person, it shouldn't be impossible. Around the right person with time and communication, it should be possible, providing it's something that both people want. But the core element, before even considering a new relationship and onwards, is understanding the reality of people that have been lost along the way. To summarize it, but to make it clear, if a survivor has lost a partner unexpectedly out of one's control, the act of holding back and holding on to the memory, denying the survivor of moving on, out of fear of being a bad partner to the past, well, ultimately, if the previous partner was a good partner and thought highly of the survivor or non-survivor at the time, put it that way, well then that former loved one should want the best for, the person, want the best, want them to be happy, whatever they do in life. So it'd be for the survivor, who may feel survivor's guilt, should be deserving of being able to move on in life, being able to respect and honour the wishes of the past by living life and moving on within reason. Nothing wrong with that. The act of the survivor holding themselves back in the idea that that's what's right. The past partner, if they're good, may not want that for the survivor. They may want the survivor to move on because that's the right thing to do in the eyes of the previous partner, but it's also the healthy action for the survivor too. Because that goes both ways. Now, if it's a loved one, a bad partner that's done it self-inflicted, removed themselves, survivor's guilt, intense blame and all that feeling within the survivor, feeling responsible. But at the end of the day, if there was not clear communication among struggles and issues with that bad partner, it's the bad partner's responsibility to share and open up, so then there's help and there's action. If that never actually happened, what more could the survivor possibly do? If there was complications, even if there was a bit of communication and the survivor was already struggling with their own struggles because of the hands of that said bad partner, first of all, why should the survivor owe that bad person anything in the first place after what's gone on? And secondly, why or how could the survivor do anything more when they're already struggling already? They've got their own struggles, their own stuff going on in life. So what more can be done? And as well, when it comes to other situations of loss in general, family members or friends, if it was the act of losing through illness, complications and stuff like that, the loss is unpredictable, can feel a loss of control, a loss of power, but always reminding oneself there can be things that are out of one's control in life that can't be controlled and nothing could be done about it, nothing could have changed it. It may not make the person feel better, but it just eases it just a little bit to remove any guilt, any blame, any possible what-ifs. Some things can't be changed and some things can't be controlled and some things may not be reversed. Some things may be untreatable. As bad and hard as it is, sometimes it can be like that. But what matters is the good things that are supposedly lost technically aren't lost if there are memories deep down within and are felt, or more genetically by family, parents. The feeling of what's physically lost is never lost because it's what's retained within, and it's what makes the person who they are till this day because of the influence of their own parents. If the parents were good people, It's an inner reflection and an outer reflection of this survivor, who they are right now. A survivor can be naturally kind, caring, helpful, attentive to detail, patient and understanding, and so much more, good sense of humour. But part of that can come from the inner reflection of how good their parents were too. So as the parents may have passed on, the memory continues in and is carried naturally by the presence and the weight of the survivor in keeping on going in life, or at least trying in life and just getting on by, simply existing. Simply by existing is remembering, carrying, and not losing the memories of the family, and all that can come in different ways too. But it's just the perspective of things that may be lost on, or not technically lost. You could talk about photos, images, tattoos, which are a reminder, which is good. But it's what's beneath the skin, what's within, what makes you you, can be a reflection of who you were once with and around. The good people, never lost, never left. And a true sign of parents or loved ones never being lost is because what was instilled by them into you to make you who you are now. Who you are now is who you were way back then, and anything dark that happened in between, all the darkness and corruption and the bad people that tried stripping it away from you, in some ways indirectly, all the bad people that tried destroying your memory with the loved ones that you've lost along the way, was never lost or taken, because you kept it deep down within, and it shows within your heart, and it shows within your personality and behaviour. So, at the end of the day, with each traumatic event, an individual event that's happened, and it's compiled as a form of PTSD, the effects are very real, the events are very real, but there's ever a time where you would wish or hope for things to be different, or an alternative in action, behaviour, perspective, in a healthier way towards another person, remove the worry or the fear of being a hypocrite. Remove the worry or the fear of you yourself not being deserving, but everyone else is. You are just as deserving as anyone else in the same situation. Anything that you may have said or reflected on towards another person, metaphorically, different points of view in a positive light, should equally shine back on yourself too. Because naturally, that's just how it should be, really. You don't deserve to suffer, and you've suffered too much already. It shouldn't continue. There should be a form of easing if there was ever a time for that. And the food chain of how one feels, as in the effects, how it impacts the survivor, and what it can lead to, the limitations and restrictions, and how it can conflict with a new relationship or a friendship, to how it leads to a frozen state and feeling a double-edged sword, wanting to do this and that, but not being able to, and then feeling bad for it, and then being held back by the past, and a cycle like that, to then tiring out because it's too much, retreating, isolating, and then feeling everything has been lost. That in the eyes of the survivor, the deep-rooted fear was holding people at arm's length because they didn't want to lose another person in life. But inevitably, by the arm's length itself, had led to an invisible struggle leading up indirectly to that freeze system collapse, on top of many other things in life, leading to withdrawal, where the other person technically never abandoned the survivor and never walked away, but the survivor isolated themselves to protect themselves and to protect the loved ones around them, but ultimately leading to losing someone. So what the survivor feared losing, inevitably they lost someone. But did they really? Because if a connection is real, and if something was felt back then, maybe it can still be present now. Think of it like a highway. Once on the same side of the road, one person crosses over, and now there's a flow of cars and traffic moving quick. You see glimpses, you feel fragments of that person. You may not see them anymore, you may not hear them anymore, but you sense that they're still about, you sense that they're still present because they still care, they still love, that their heart has never stopped beating because it's impossible for it to stop beating for that said person when things never really ended, or it was abrupt and there was no true break or split. Sometimes advice is just to move on both ways, but other times it's just not possible if the connection is strong, if there is still something there to fight for. despite the freeze or despite the other distance and the unknown, person stabbing in the dark from the other end. But it's like there is an invisible connection, but fragmented, but there is still something there. It's just the trauma, it's the demons, it's the invisible barriers which have kind of got in the way. It's like the traffic on the road which is coming heavier now. You can't look ahead and you can't be on the same side as them because you're on opposing sides, looking through an invisible glass. But for one person it could be a mirror, for the other person it's just glass, seeing right through. Complex, but it doesn't always have to be like that. That with time, with healing, maybe these videos for someone out there, maybe it can help lower that wall, lower that traffic on the road to finally cross back over and be on the same side again. Now, just to tie it all in, scenario, role play, point of view. If I was ever in a situation where I knew of someone, if I was in a relationship with a survivor, for example, even at arm's length, as hard as that can be, and wanting more but not possible at the time, if followed by a silence or a disappearance, we're trying to understand, like I said in previous videos, if I was in a situation, if I knew of someone, do I just move on? Do I just disconnect? No. Because if I was in that situation, whether it be days passing by, weeks passing by, months passing by, for as long as I am, or if I was a lone wolf, my heart simply couldn't stop beating for them. A person would have to kill me, metaphorically, for the heart to stop beating for that said person who's no longer present, or visible at least. My heart isn't as big as other people, but I'd sense that maybe it would be quite strong but stubborn. But I understand in a concept like that, it could be a double-edged sword, and it could be hard for the survivor if they knew that, because they think, I'm struggling to get better, I'm struggling, I'm not ready, and this person is still thinking and feeling for me. It's not fair. It's not fair for them, but it's also hard on me because of that pressure. Double-edged sword, of course. But I can't disconnect. I can't be a psychopath. I may have felt or thought I was a psychopath all this time, but really, the complete opposite. In a scenario like that, despite the size of the heart, the strength of it would continue beating for them in that scenario because of the connection that I could have with someone in that situation. So, with that being said, beside that point of view, hopefully this video helps in some way, as in the 3 steps to healing, as in the inside-out approach. You consider how you feel. You consider what you would want or wish for other people, and then you reflect back on the outcome. It should be the same for yourself too, because you're deserving equally. And furthermore, the true depth of what you've gone through, it's understandable why you thought the way you did originally. I hope that helps in a way. And if you need any more additional perspective, or so I said, the other videos at top right corner where the eye symbol is up there, if you click on it, with the previous series to this and the previous videos as well. With that all being said, you can always return back to this video whenever need be. But for now, take care, goodbye, good night for now.